It was one of the few bullets that actually did everything it was designed to do. Hello everyone and welcome back to AmmoMart.com, where you can find real firepower online. It's great to be back in the studio, and as we promised in some previous videos, we're going to cover the history of the .327 Federal Magnum. This is quite an interesting cartridge, and it was developed out of two basic needs. The cartridge was released in January of 2008 as a joint venture between Federal Premium Ammunition and Sturm Ruger. That partnership decided that what they were going to try to do is develop .357 Magnum power out of a smaller cartridge that could be used in a smaller frame. That's significant because the whole intention of the development was to get 6 rounds in a firearm that would typically only hold 5 should they be chambered in a larger Magnum cartridge. So, as we've noticed in the past, what they did was sort of tweak something that was already on the market, which in this case happened to be the .32 H&R Magnum. The .32 H&R Magnum had been out since 1984 and is simply a stretched case of its parent case, the .32 Smith & Wesson Long, which dates all the way back to 1878. So as you can tell, what we have is beginning, middle, and end, and everything just seems to be a little taller. However, the .327 Federal Magnum is a little more complicated than that. To get the performance that they required out of that cartridge, they not only lengthened the case, but they strengthened the web at the base. They used a lot of different metallurgy and thicker case walls so that you could load the cartridge to 45,000 pounds PSI, which is awfully impressive in that little cartridge. It actually has a higher operating pressure than even .30 carbine. What that produces is an incredibly fast round, somewhere around 13 to 1400 feet per second, and can deliver in a jacketed hollow point up to 620 foot-pounds of energy. And those speeds are developed out of a 3-inch barrel. Awfully impressive. As time went on, people began to notice some other interesting characteristics of the .327 Federal Magnum. First, because of its speed, it is an extremely flat shooting cartridge and hence very, very accurate. Another thing that shooters began to notice, and this all goes back to the original intent of the cartridge besides cramming more rounds into a revolver, was the shooter notices less felt recoil than you do with a .357 Magnum of the same platform. In fact, studies show that the .327 has about 1/3 less recoil than a .357. Now, a word on that before we continue. While researching this video, I kind of came across a lot of information that suggested they kind of heavily stressed the reduced recoil of the .327 Federal Magnum. I would like our viewers to note one thing, and that is that it still has a pretty good amount of recoil. Don't be confused, this is not a .22. Yes, it might be less than .357, but this comes down to all a matter of perspective. If you think you get a small, lightweight .327, that it's going to have no recoil, this is not going to be the choice for you. It is actually quite noticeable, and like I said, maybe slightly better, but not a lot. The original weapon that this cartridge was designed to go into was the Ruger SP-101. That's a small to mid-sized revolver, certainly smaller than the GP-100, and is more suited for everyday carry. Out of that, some other manufacturers like Taurus, I even have an example here from Charter Arms, began to make snub nose or small frame revolvers because it is absolutely true. I'm going to pick this guy up here. This is an example from Ruger. This size firearm, chambered in .357 or .38, would typically only hold 5. In all of these examples on the table, you do get that extra round for 6. Now, in my humble opinion, that seems to be a long way around the barn for one more round. And when we do our stopping power video, I think that we're going to be able to demonstrate that it is as good, as 357 Magnum, but at this point I highly doubt that it's better. One of the significant things you must also consider if you're going to select this caliber for purchase is it's quite expensive. Even the 32 Smith & Wesson long is about $40 a box, and the prices only go up for self-defense ammunition. Oddly enough, one of the really good things about the 327 Federal Magnum is you can shoot all the 32s out of it, including 32 H&R Magnum, of course the 32 Smith & Wesson long, as well as the short, and even 32 ACP. So it does have a lot of versatility, but I'm not sure that versatility across 4 or 5 very expensive rounds is actually what the consumer is after. In fact, this sort of tie ballistically with 357 as compared to the cost is one reason why I believe the round really hasn't caught on very much. In 2018, Gun Digest did an article about whether 327 was the best all-purpose Magnum cartridge ever invented. I'll leave a link in the description so you can access the Gun Digest article and draw your own conclusions. So let's get technical for a second. The actual caliber of the projectile is .312. The overall length is 1.47 inches. And as we said, this guy develops a lot of energy. Your typical self-defense round will weigh 100 grains to 115 grains. And of course, your speed is usually around 100 feet per second, difference depending on the round that you choose. It's been demonstrated over and over and over how powerful that little round is. It does what it says it does, and we hope to be able to show you that in our normal setup for ballistic gel in the upcoming video. It has been converted very successfully to everyday carry guns, as you can tell, and we'll talk about those also in an upcoming video. The 327 Magnum has an interesting history because it was one of the few bullets that actually did everything it was designed to do, but nobody really seemed to care. It's not a super popular revolver caliber. Henry Repeating Arms Company has even made lever action rifles chambered in 327 Federal Magnum. Those are also kind of not super popular, and you don't see a lot of them. So it's kind of odd that you have this caliber with this cooperation between a major gun manufacturer and ammunition manufacturer. They did everything they set out to do, and the consumer really doesn't seem to care much about it. So it could be a lesson in inventing things that people don't really need. I hope you've enjoyed the history of this caliber, and there'll be some upcoming videos where we test the stopping power of it and how it would all work as an everyday carry selection.